Good morning, Dan. Good morning, everyone.
Hey, Doug, how are you?
Still recovering from surgery, but I'm still here.
That's what counts, right?
That's right.
It looks like we do have a quorum, so if you want me to run through the kind of rules and procedures, then you can call it to order and I can do a roll call.
Call to order, yeah, very good.
Alrighty. Is my screen shared currently? See that? All right, so the Ohio City Design Review Committee virtual meetings, regulations and procedures. The meeting shall be conducted according to Robert's Rules of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by voice vote. Recusal due to conflict of interest should be stated for the record prior to the start of any presentation. Committee member will then leave the meeting for the duration of the case discussion. No presentation submissions will be accepted after the deadline. The chair will call the meeting to order and ask for a roll call of the committee. The administrator will introduce the first project and provide some background information if applicable. The meeting will then be turned over to the applicant to proceed through their presentation. Each presentation should be completed prior to questions and comments from the committee. Once the presentation is concluded, the administrator will read any received comments. The committee will then begin deliberations and project review. Please use the raise hand feature. After deliberations and review concludes, the committee will render its recommendation and vote. After the vote, the applicants may leave the meeting and the administrator will introduce the next project. All projects will follow the same format until all projects are heard by the committee. Once all projects are heard, the chair will call for any committee/administrative reports. After all reports have been heard, the chair will adjourn the meeting. As far as community comments go, any and all community members may provide their written comments, thoughts, or questions regarding the projects presented to the committee for review and approval. Community members may also telephone their comments or questions to the committee administrator, which is myself. All comments, thoughts, or questions must be submitted to the committee administrator no later than 48 hours before the start of the meeting, and submissions can be made by email, phone, or mail. Public comments or submissions made after the deadline will not be heard by the committee. Public comment will be collected by Landmark staff and sent to the committee members for review prior to the scheduled meeting. Staff will summarize the received comments. The applicant of the project is under no obligation to answer community questions. Community members are invited to attend design review committee meetings, but there will be no open public comment period. All projects follow the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation. All projects are being considered for the issuance of a certificate of appropriateness. Projects are considered on a case-by-case basis. And the Ohio City Design Review Committee is advisory to the Cleveland Landmarks Commission. Recommendations by this committee are not final actions. Depending on the scope of the project, submissions may be approved administratively or will need to be reviewed by the Cleveland Landmarks Commission. Projects will be scheduled at the next available commission meeting after an action is taken. So,
all right. With that,
so Mr. Wall, yes, if you want.
Call this meeting to order. Dan, would you please call the roll?
Sure. Mr. Frendorf? Ms. Land?
Here.
Mr. Lozier?
Here.
Ms. Marinucci? Present. Mr. Sambury?
Here.
Mr. Talley?
Here.
And Mr. Wall.
Here.
Mr. Chair, we have quorum. So we will proceed to our first agenda item, which is case OC 23-06, 2843 Franklin Boulevard. Fence installation. We have Kyle Cantor here. This was tabled on March 2nd, 2023. So I think before we hear what Kyle has to say, we'll need a motion to untable.
Move to untable.
A second.
Okay, Dan, please call the roll.
Mr. Frondorf? Ms. Lamb?
Yes.
Mr. Lozier?
Yes.
Mr. Sandbury?
Yes.
Mr. Talley?
Yes.
And Mr. Wall?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Chair,
Before
the
we
motion
turn-
on the table has passed.
Before we turn this over to the presenter, I'd just like to admonish all the presenters and the committee members. We have a pretty full agenda again today, so please keep your comments concise and to the point if you can.
All right, Mr. Cantor, I have your presentation, so if you want to go ahead and start your presentation, just let me know when you'd like me to switch slides.
Sure, great. Thank you all. Good to see you again. I think where we left off was there was a request to add a brick pillar to the front corner of which would be the northwest corner. If you want to zoom in on this slide here. Yeah, so it's that front left corner where the purple meets the roadway there that meets Franklin Boulevard. So the applications for the fence to stretch the property line here on the west side of 2843 Franklin between Sanford House and Rhodes Mansion. So we've included, previous to this slide, renderings and cut sheets of what the fence will look like. And then I've provided, I hope it's in here later in the deck, we can go to the proposed brick pillar, which matches the brick pillars of our sign, which is in the front yard as well. So this is a image of what the brick pillar will look like. It will be painted the same blue as our building and the same blue as the two other brick pillars that are in the front, which hold the sign up. And I think there are dimensions and information. Here we go. So this is what it'll look like. Again, it'll match the other two that are in the front yard, and it'll provide some a kind of an anchor to that front corner where the fence will end just before the sidewalk. And then it'll be landscaped along the fence line on our side of the property. I'm happy to answer any questions or talk in more detail about the project. These are all views from our front porch of all the fences that are around across the street and at other neighboring properties.
I just have two observations. One, the images that you point out are either across the frontage of those properties or as the image that we see here on the screen. It returns down the length of the property. And here it just terminates into a brick pier. And I don't think any of the examples that you provided do that. And the second comment is, I know that you've related this to the brick piers that are in existence on the sign, but I just have to note for the record that that sign was never approved by this body or by landmarks, and that it was tabled, and that never came back before us. I think.
No, I think it was approved at the last.
If I'm mistaken, then I apologize. I don't recall that, but if I am, then I apologize.
Yeah, the last time we presented it, I was under the impression that everything was done with that sign. We made adjustments to the caps that was requested, and this pillar will reflect those adjustments as well.
If that's the case, then I'm sorry. Then my only comment then goes back to, I think there should be a return along the frontage here, and not just terminate in the pillar. But that's my only comment.
Yeah.
I would like to have that same recommendation. Again, all of the images that you have included as precedent all have that going across the frontage as well. And I would not be comfortable supporting this without the fence going across the front. The other thing too, which I think was brought up during the last conversation, was there's a pretty significant grade change between the lawn and the sidewalk. And I think what was requested was a drawing or an elevation of how you intend to manage that that grade change. Is the plan to step the fence? Is the plan to angle the fence? I think I would need to see those drawings as well before I would be comfortable making a recommendation to approve.
Okay, the with regard to the return along the front in the future, there's the potential for that. We have issues right now related to traffic over our front lawn, and that's the purpose of this these things it'll span all along that property line into the rear of the property. And that's our initial need here. And we don't object to potentially doing that, but it would across the front, but it would also need to then return down what would be the east side of the property. And we would need to figure out, there's a retaining wall there and everything that along with a front walk, where there's some grade change as well. So that will all need to be figured out. And again, don't necessarily object to that as a future plan, but the need for this fence is related to issues that we're having with traffic across the front lawn from neighboring properties and as a cut through from Circle Court down headed west onto Franklin Boulevard. So I don't recall us discussing that return. I think I presented it and mentioned those issues when I originally presented, or the past couple times I've presented this. And so that was the request for the pillar, so that it didn't just kind of end at the sidewalk. There was an ending point there. And again, we would, landscape accordingly to, to match that ending.
Yeah, I understand the intent of why you're proposing this fence, but I think that it needs to follow precedent within the neighborhood, and there really is no precedent of it just going along the property line. I feel that it really does need to go across the front as well to mimic the precedent that you have shown. My colleagues may feel differently.
I agree with Chris, and I believe we pretty much unanimously suggested, that it would be better to have a fence across the front in at least our last session of discussing this. And I wonder if Kyle, to maybe split the difference, you'd be willing to agree to come back, within 1 year to make a proposal to extend this across the front. I know that's like doubling the amount of fence you plan on doing, and can appreciate that maybe it's a difficult thing to do right now, but there's some way you can give us some more assurance, then maybe we'll look at it in the future.
Yeah, happy to do that. That is our goal, is to fence the front yard in. There are several additional complications related to it, and yes, the cost of it would at least double. Issues related to that front grade, would we need to, cut that front grade and build a brick retaining wall or some kind of a stone retaining wall or something? So, and then, landscape down the front edge, then we would have the front walk and some kind of a gate issue. And then over on the east side of the property, there's a stone wall retaining wall where our parking meets the front yard. So happy to do that. We want to do that. We want to figure out a way to do that. Obviously there is a way. But again, the immediate need is to put this along the property line.
All right, and I'd like to also add Chris's comment about how you're gonna deal with the grade change. Are you gonna slope the fence to follow the line, each segment of fence, or are you gonna step it? I think that's kind of an important consideration to understand about.
Yeah, it's really only the grade change is really, sorry, I'm looking out the window at it. It's really only about probably 3 or 4 feet, maybe 5 feet from where the fence would terminate, where this pillar would be. So we're happy to slope it or step it, whatever is preferred here. We happy to take direction and incorporate it into the design. But again, it's really only, we got to be a couple feet off the sidewalk, and then, you know, so where it's actually going to slope is only about, you know, say one section of fence, and happy to take your input on how you'd like to see that.
Well, for my money, I'd prefer to use, slope the fence to accommodate the grade instead of stepping it. Anyone else feels about that?
Yeah, I would need to see what the solution is before I would be comfortable signing off on it.
Kyle, do you have a survey drawing of the property with topography on it? That if you do,
No.
you do it. It wouldn't be too hard to.
No, we don't have that. I don't, you know, it's in these images more or less of where it would approach the sidewalk, and it's, yeah, I mean, it's about 4 or 5 foot section at the end there that would slope down, not unlike slide, I guess it's in slide 4. You can kind of see how it's not unlike the step railing there that you see in that image, where it would just, that last section would slope down. It would be a less of a slope than those stairs, but not unlike how that appears in there in slide 4.
Well, as Chris said, I hesitate to approve something without seeing it on paper, but I think if you sloped it, I would be happy with that. So again, let's hear some comments from other committee members.
My preference is not to approve things without seeing them, just generally speaking.
Well, then, without additional commentary here, I think we're kind of in agreement that among the committee members that we would like to see a drawing showing that, a side profile of how the property slopes with the fence on it, so that we really know what we're approving. Because with the shadow of the house on this front yard photo, I can't really tell what's going on the slope wise along the grade itself. It looks like it looks kind of like it's a gradual slope all the way down from, say, where the line of where that car is parked down to the front yard. And Kyle, you're saying that it's not.
Yeah,
So
this is
I can tell about that one way or the other.
right. This is actually the neighbor's yard that's in this photo, so it's not ours. Ours would be to the right, and our lawn is much flatter and raised up until the last 4 or 5 feet. So we will come back with an elevation. Is there anything else?
Anything else, committee members?
I think it would just be good to then include the timetable of when the phase 2 part of the fence would go across the front.
Okay.
Hearing nothing else, I'll motion to table.
I'll second.
Thank you. Dan, please call the roll.
Right, Mr. Frendorf,
Yes.
Ms. Lamb,
Yes.
Mr. Lozier,
Yes.
Mr. Sambry,
Yes.
Mr. Talley,
Yes.
and Mr. Wall.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, the motion to table passes unanimously. All right, Kyle, I'll be in touch, as far as next steps. Let me know if you have questions, but we'll get you ready to come back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right, our next agenda item, case 23-015/OC23-07, 3911 John Avenue, which was tabled back in April. The applicant is not able to make it today, so that will be getting bumped from the agenda, as well as the conceptual case OC 23-20, the last agenda item for 1854 Fulton Road. So at this point, it looks like our applicants are here for case, the third agenda item, case 23-033/23-034/OC23-15, 50 West, the proposed new development at Lorraine Avenue and West 50th Street. It involves demolition and new construction. We have Chad here and Paul, Jordan, some other team members. So I'll let them take over the presentation if you guys just want to let me know and you want me to switch through slides.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. This is Chad Curtis from My Place Group. Excited to present to you some changes we've made, and after hearing the feedback we've been receiving from Landmarks and your design review committee for 50 West. I guess I'm going to highlight just the overall numbers, and then I'm going to ask the architects to go through and kind of talk about the details. I think for time as well, we can skip some of the site plan, some of the neighborhood context pictures, unless you guys want to go through that. Currently, where the building lands is we have 109 apartments, we have 72 bike spaces, and there are 62 ground floor spaces. Some of the things we've done, which again I'll let the architects go over in detail, were some changes to materials, removing some of the balconies in certain areas, adjusting some of the setbacks, as well as some of the pergolas on the top floor with some feedback I believe we heard at Landmarks. Overall, making some modifications to really try to make it a better building, changing the materials from some siding to some more brick in different areas. But I guess Etienne, or would you like to present, or Yav, or Tim?
I'll present. So just, I guess if we can go to some of the elevations or the perspectives, that'd be great. So a lot of the changes that we did were focused on the kind of Lorraine Avenue elevation. What we have done is the kind of upper floors, we got comments that the kind of board and batten siding wasn't seen as very favorable. So what we've done is we transitioned that into kind of trim and with siding. So that whole area, we've lightened that up. We've gone to a palette that is more kind of browns rather than grays. And then what we did is we took the two kind of new buildings that are on Lorraine, and we have added brick accents to those, and then used that accent color in that center portion to kind of tie the three pieces together. And then we eliminated the pergola on the top floor. Just to keep it short, that's kind of the extent of the changes. The brick detailing and stuff, we've added a little more all the way around the building. kind of tie it together.
And if it would be
Um,
helpful as well, I kind of have a list of some of the overall changes we've made as we've gotten feedback through these different meetings too. If that's helpful to review.
And I guess one other thing, we got comments on the Lorraine on kind of if you're looking at the Lorraine elevation, that front portion, which would be on the far right of this image, we pulled that back into, so it steps back, not as much as it does in the front, but as close to it on the side. So it's consistent all the way around, so that you can see it stepping back there. We also have simplified the material palette. So we've got kind of the white siding, the kind of tan, light brown siding, and a darker trim. That's it. And then the 2-color bricks. We also did pull back the railing and stuff on the existing building on the corner too, which was another suggestion on that. So it would be less visible.
Well, I think all of these changes he's made represent improvement in the overall design. So,
Thank you.
If that's the extent of the presentation, we did receive some public comment that Jessica from our office here is going to summarize. I know it's been shared with you guys, via Dropbox, but I think Jessica was going to provide a summary to it. And just as a reminder, we did conduct a site visit for the small, 1.5 story frame building that's on the site that's being proposed for demolition as well. That was a couple months ago, I think. So Jessica, if you want to go ahead with some public comment summary.
Yeah, so we received public comment for both 50 West and 45 West. Many of the comments were towards 45 West, but for 50 West, we had support in promoting revitalization and building growth in the neighborhood, appreciation for bike-friendly development. And then we also had concerns mentioned on the traffic on side streets as well as on Lorraine, and the lack of parking provided, as well as lack of impacting the local neighborhood parking. And those were the ones mainly focused on the 50 West.
May I make a comment regarding public comment quickly? I just like the record to reflect that on the pro side, that there was a Facebook post in my place that said any positive feedback given to design review or landmarks, the people giving that positive feedback would be invited to a private party and entered into a raffle to receive gift cards. I'm not saying that is wrong. I'm not saying that that diminishes validity of the comments, but I do think that for the record to be complete, that needs to be part of it to the extent comments are given weight.
Yeah, and I'd like to address that as well. So there was nothing in our letter, which is frankly posted on the front doors of the buildings that we own in the area. Public can see it. It was posted that, number one, we obviously would like to encourage people to support our project. So that's an obvious statement. But it was encouraging people, for anyone who reaches out, whether it was negative or positive. It didn't say if you're only positive, you can join us or have anything. It was the same as, hey, if we have a block club party and we're passing out food to anyone, it's no different in that. But it was the letter that we sent out openly to engage our tenants in this process. Again, we don't control whether their comments are negative or positive, but for them taking the time out of their days or weekends to do so, we wanted to say thank you. And like I said, we appreciate negative and positive feedback. We think both sides of the table have good things to come out of it.
Fair enough, Chad. Fair enough. I just wanted that to be complete for completion's sake.
Absolutely, understood.
All right, I guess if
So a couple
that's, no, I was just gonna say if that
I was just
concludes
gonna
the
say-
presentation, yeah, launch on in.
Thanks, Dan. I just have a couple of clarification questions because I'm not seeing some information in the slide deck. So looking at the slide with the materials, I guess what I'm not seeing here is what are the you sort of mentioned the coloration of the storefront windows, but you don't necessarily give what the material is or cut sheets for the types of windows that are happening sort of above the first floor. So do you have that sort of nailed down? And then I guess what I'm also questioning too is all of the non-brick material sort of lap siding, or are there flat areas of paneling?
I guess I can answer in terms of windows at the storefront level. Those will be typically aluminum window storefront frames. The restoration of the storefront would be those same type of windows. Going up to the windows in the residential areas, we haven't identified the final product. Obviously, once we get through this process, we'll be able to do that. But we would typically do a fiberglass or vinyl type of window to go along with the building.
And then just to answer your question about the siding versus paneling, the only instances of paneling would be kind of in cases where we have two windows and there's fiber cement in between. That would probably be a panel because that would be more of a traditional detail. Whereas the larger kind of fields of siding, they are actual lap siding.
Okay. Thank you. I think regarding the windows, I will let my other colleagues speak to this as well, but I believe generally this body does not support, fiberglass or vinyl windows. We prefer and suggest, aluminum clad wood windows. So keeping that in mind. Also looking at the texture of the siding material, we typically recommend that be smooth and not textured like what you're showing.
Yeah, I agree with you, and yeah, I mean that's unfortunately what we could pull off of Hardy sites. So we typically recommend smooth for the siding also.
Gotcha. Thanks for the clarification.
It would be helpful, Tim, if you indicated that on your legend. You can't find a picture of the smooth, say smooth, not textured.
Okay, noted. We will change that next time.
I think to reinforce Chris's comment about the windows, we generally do not like or approve vinyl windows, but we have in instances of new construction sometimes, but we would at least need to know more information about the windows. What color are they? I think white vinyl is probably not something we would generally support. So we would at least need to know the color and would like to see you call out a manufacturer and give us a cut sheet on the window product because you've got a lot of windows here.
I wanted to second that. I mean, I think for a multifamily building of this size, I would think, a vinyl or fiberglass would hopefully be acceptable because I think that would be a big cost. They have dark bronze or black as colors that definitely look much better than like a white vinyl. That would be, you know, in my opinion, that would be unacceptable. Um, Also, I wanted to know where that decorative screen panel, where is that going to be?
The decorative screen panel is kind of along the back, along the garage area to kind of screen the garage from the adjacent properties.
Okay. Um, yeah, I would just be curious of what that looks like.
Yeah,
So,
and I think that's part of our intention is we really haven't designed that yet. So sometimes it's shown as the um, vegetated screen wall. Sometimes it's shown as a laser cut thing, but that we're gonna try to create something that's of interest and kind of maybe relates to the neighborhood or something that could be an interesting kind of pattern that
gotcha.
would really accent the building.
Gotcha. Yeah, I like that idea. Something historic or something local would be nice. I think this is a great improvement. The elevations read, I think, a lot better, especially these like back ones and the you know, you can see what's facing you, what's up front, and you can see what's up back. It looks like most of the windows are, I'm guessing single hung, um, or I'm assuming single hung, except for kind of that modern piece on the corner um that's floating above everything. I really like kind of the first three stories in the brick, and I actually like when the brick goes up to the top to the fourth story. I think those are all very successful. I also like the white piece, kind of breaking everything up. The piece that stepped back, I'm not 100% sold on, but I don't mind it either. But I just want to say it is this has come along really nicely, and I think it's going to be a great project for the neighborhood.
Thank you.
I have a number of comments. I guess I'll just start with, if we could, yeah, start at the top of the screen there in the north elevation. I liked how you've delineated, you turned the one section that's set back there of brick. I think the white hardy panels that are in between the windows doesn't quite work, and I don't think ages particularly well. And I think that should just be all brick for consistency. I think it will age better, it'll look better. That's my one comment there on the north facade. Windows overall, I agree with Chris and with Doug. And Philip, I know you're new to this body, but we typically do not approve vinyl windows in any situation in the historic district. And I would not like to make an exception here. I think that they should be aluminum clad wood windows, or something of a higher quality. And I would like to see the details on that before we can give final approval. We've already talked about the siding, and it would not be wood grained. On the south elevation there, if we could go to the south elevation. Thank you. Same comment there. You know, I know that this is the back of the building, but it's also a residential area to the back there, and I'd like to see more detail, especially where you have the horizontal rectangular windows. They're marching up. That's a lot of hardy product. I'd like to see the brick continue. I know, I think this is the horseshoe shape. It doesn't have to go all the way into the horseshoe, of course, but have the return follow a little bit further along before resorting to hardy. And then the massing on Lorraine, I'm fine with. I have no problem there. I think it's very appropriate. But as you enter, and my comments will be the same for 45th, as you come into the neighborhood there, you have two-story single or two-family homes. I'd like to see consideration more seriously done. And my comments on this have been consistent from the beginning of stepping it back. You don't have to go down to 2 stories. That's not necessary. But what would it look like if you stepped it back like you did here on this image on Lorraine? You step it back 20 to 30 feet, whatever that is in those renderings. And so that the wall abutting those homes there is not just a 4-story wall. but that there's some step back, there's some breathing room there. I haven't reviewed carefully the zoning, but my hunch is that that would eliminate some of the variances you would need along that part of the project as well. On the west elevation, we could take a look at that. I like to see there what you've done so well, I think, on the Lorraine side, and that white setback panel that's more hardy, return that to brick and make those materials more of the historic palette that you would find to make it consistent. And again, the same with the white hardy panels between the windows. I think it would look a lot better maintaining one materiality. And then on the, sorry, I'm just going through my notes here. My comments would be the same on the east elevation there as well as it pertains to hardy. And I think we need to see a little bit more of the details, not just for the windows, but detailing on the brickwork. It looks like there may be some awnings there. It's unclear how those look in the detail. Just generally additional information to the detailing work for the cornice there on the brick, I think is important to look at a little more closely. I'll stop there, but for this, and also I would second the screening. It looks like there's vegetation there. I'm very just about using vegetation on screening. In Yield Hingetown, there's a green wall there on the south side of the building at 29th and Church. For half the year, it's covered up with plastic because the vegetation can't survive the Cleveland winters. I would expect that this would be no different, and so I'd be very careful about using green vegetation as a screening device. Though I like it 6 months a year, the other times I think it's very problematic, and we just saw this with another applicant 2 weeks ago on its garage screening that we all also had some concerns about. I'll stop there. Those are my comments.
Could you speak more to the changes that were made to the balconies? I know that we, as a body, suggested maybe pulling them more into the building a little bit and not having them just pinned on the side of the building. Have any changes been made to those?
Yes, along Lorraine, we have gone to Juliet balconies. So they're kind of more traditional in that, and versus the ones that are tacked on and projecting out. As we go to the sides, some of those do become kind of like the ones that project out, but the majority of them are all the ones on Lorraine or are Juliet's.
Okay, thank you. I think I would also reiterate Alex's comments of the panels between the windows. I'd love to see that be brick or not a hardy panel. And along with the windows, anything fiberglass or vinyl would not be appropriate in my personal opinion.
Yeah, if I could add just one comment to that too. I mean, we're hoping to build buildings that especially on sort of the Lorraine corridor that can last 50, 60, 70 years. So being really cognizant of the materials that we're using, I think will only make the project's longevity more successful. So aluminum clad wood windows, more use of brick, things like that.
Yeah, understandable.
So with these comments in mind, would you be willing to go back and address some of these? I think there's some disagreement, but I think 90% of our comments are consistent with one another. Would you be willing to take those comments back and bring back the proposal with some of them addressed and with additional detail?
Yeah, so I guess just kind of going over what we've heard, there's obviously some discussion on the window type. So I think, we'll look at the window types and getting details. Frankly, a number of the buildings that we've built and other buildings around the neighborhood are fiberglass windows in certain instances. I think finding the right color and making sure those are appropriate to the historic context is something we're happy to explore doing. Some of them we can identify where it makes sense financially and practically to make them some aluminum clad windows. So we can identify that. And then I agree with you all on the smooth siding, so we can identify and indicate that on our sample board. Also, I think the green wall by the garage, the intent is to have a decorative panel more than the green wall. So we're just an architectural picture item thing. We'll clean that up. Again, the window details. We'll also work on maybe getting a sample design panel for what the decorative panel will look like and have a concept for you for that. We can evaluate the hardy between the windows and how that detail shows. It's something we've done in other areas and it is seen throughout, but we'll look at that. Increasing the brick all over the back and removing any of the siding on the front side to brick. Financially, I think that's going to be a pretty big challenge, but we'll look at what can be done to maybe massage things a little bit more. But we've added a significant brick portion along Lorraine, so that is now an all brick facade up through the front 3 stories.
And Chair, just to clarify, I wasn't saying that the whole inner horseshoe area had to be brick. That's not what I was saying. So
okay,
just to clarify.
No, I appreciate that. But yeah, we can definitely make that, and then yeah. So comments I'm kind of going over is identifying windows. You asked for some detail on the brick, how the brick ties in around on the different sides of the buildings, what that header detail or cornice detail, all that, so we can identify that. But yeah, no, I think we can make these clarifications and be back to you shortly with that.
If I might add just a couple of additional things that would be helpful for us as we're reviewing. One, you have some really great 3D views from sort of the Lorraine side, but can you also provide some of the similar 3D views looking toward the back of the property as well, just so that we can see what those back areas start to look like, and that may also help better illustrate what the screening material might be and how that might sort of interact with the building and with the context. Also, I think with the elevation, the south elevation, on the west. I'm not sure which street it is, which side. So the south elevation where you have the house blocking half of that elevation. If you could remove that house so we see the full elevation, I think it would be helpful for us to kind of understand too, kind of how that full side touches the ground plane.
Absolutely.
Okay, Chris, just to clarify, when the perspective views you're asking for, they're from street views still though, right? So you're looking down the street, just seeing the existing houses in the foregrounds and then how they interact with the new building.
Well, I think it's more, looking at the south elevation, if you were to, stand, in a view that you're able to see kind of that, that 3/4 view of the front, the street facing side and then the property facing side on both of the south corners. From sort of eye level perspective.
Yeah. Okay.
Awesome.
I think you guys are getting close on this one. So,
thank you.
If there's not any other comments, I'll make a motion to table.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Dan, please call the roll.
All right, Mr. Frendorf,
Yes.
Ms. Land,
Yes.
Mr. Lozier,
Yes.
Mr. Sambury, Mr. Talley,
Yes.
and Mr. Wall.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, the motion to table passes unanimously.
All right, thanks.
which brings us to case number 23-035/OC23-14, 45 West. Same presenters. We got Chad and Tim. This is for partial demolition of the old Coleman Nunn Funeral Home, just the rear portion, and then new construction.
Thank you, everyone. Again, excited to share with you our changes based on the feedback we've heard from both committees. Highlighting just some of the overall numbers, the project currently has 101 apartments, 58 parking spaces, 43 bike spaces, and then we have the retail portion up on Lorraine, as well as the lobby is what is designed as the new use of the existing building off of Lorraine. I've got a lot of different notes on different things we can discuss, but I'm going to let Tim kind of go over and highlight some of the changes that we've made to reflect the comments we've heard on the building.
So I guess this building has changed a lot since you have last seen it. What we have done is we've tried to minimize the connection points between the buildings. So we've increased the reading of the depth of each of the buildings from the sides. That kind of correlates to the kind of context buildings and how deep they are generally. So Lorraine, the buildings are kind of deeper, as you can kind of see on like the buildings to the left-hand side. And then kind of making a more of a residential scale kind of on the north side of the building to kind of correlate to those buildings. We have also added, rather than having a contained courtyard, we have opened the side up so that provides a long kind of light well, more open courtyard to the north, so that we kind of break down the scale of that building. We actually even pulled it away from that existing house to the north with setback. And then we also changed the vehicular access point from the right-hand side to the left-hand side of the project, to the 45th Street. And we added some ground floor studios on 44th Street to kind of pick up that residential language, kind of creating a building there that kind of reads more as kind of like a double or kind of row house kind of piece that, reads all the same vertically. And then we broke down the scale, just having 3 stories in the front portion there. So if we look at the west elevation, the top floor there is set back. We've kind of got this rhythm there. We inserted the vehicular access point towards the left-hand side of that. We also have added some masking or screening so you can kind of see where the pieces fall and how far away they are. The south elevation in Lorraine, we have lowered that brick portion in the front down to 3 stories and then pushed that upper floor back, which also is the same instance behind the house. We also kind of done that so it doesn't kind of overpower the house as you're looking at it. We kind of kept the very minimal kind of cemented kind of brick facade, keeping it very traditional on that facade. And then if you go to the next set of elevations, the east elevation, we kind of broke it down so it feels kind of more like, more the vertical building is all kind of attached, so it feels kind of more like a townhouse, with the front porch there for both of those units that kind of project out and kind of engage the street there, and then the upper roof terrace is then set back with the amenity deck there, and then the back elevation we kind of tried to screen just to get context of what the existing houses are. So you can kind of see the side elevations. the kind of the big changes. We've added a lot more brick to this, so we took the brick, wrapped it around, took it back, especially for this Lorraine building. We also added some separation between the existing kind of White House and our building to try to kind of create this glass kind of transparent piece that kind of connects the buildings because we need to have them connected, but also gives them some room to breathe and some separation there. And, you know, as you can see, we kind of tried to, we've taken that brick farther back on that side too, and reduce the amount of pieces that are in the connectors. And those connector pieces, and especially on this view, it's pushed back even farther than it was previously. This is a better view of the residential, the kind of townhouses along the street. And we went with the fiber cement siding and trim on this to kind of pick up more of the residential character of the houses and kind of tie them into the neighborhood a little bit more. It's pretty similar to what it used to be. Just kind of shows potentially, you know, in the future kind of build out and just how it would fit in with that. And then like 50th Street, we kind of minimize the palette. So we have three, and all three sidings would be the smooth, not the wood grain. And then kind of this one brick, kind of it's kind of a richer kind of brick that would kind of fit in with the area, kind of be more historical to the context. And then screen wall would be, again, to be determined later. Lighten the palette and made it, we've gone away from the grays, gone more towards a brown, warmer tone.
Tim, if does that pretty much conclude the presentation?
Yeah, so Chad, unless Chad has something to add.
No, I mean, I think Tim's covered a lot of it. We've listened to a lot of the comments we've received at this board and the other board and neighborhood feedback, and done our best to incorporate those elements in. Obviously, this section shows, how we've opened up the building on the north facade. Really tried to make each part of the building have its own components and really do a nice job integrating it into the neighborhood while being sensitive to the surrounding properties. So, but happy to answer any questions. Have plenty of notes to discuss.
I guess, and just one more comment. We did pull the building back on this side elevation to kind of start scaling it down to the houses adjacent to it. So.
All right. Well, thank you guys. Jessica has some public comment that we received. As Alex mentioned before, there was the posting or whatever, soliciting comment. But Jessica's going to summarize all the comments that we received through our normal channels as described in our policies.
So as with the 50 West, there are some comments that were received that applied to both projects. Those included support on building growth in the neighborhood and making the buildings more bike friendly. They did note similar concerns on traffic and the lack of parking. On 45 West specifically, there were comments on concern on the parking entrance setback and safety concerns with pedestrians walking and not being able to see the cars coming in and out. Note comments on the density with the apartments and the adjoining single-family home, neighborhoods around it, no buffer between the building and the homes along West 44th, and general comments on the proposal not fitting in with the type of housing found in the residential neighborhoods on 45th and 44th, and a concern with the traffic impacts on West 44th with the new entry exit in that spot.
All right, thank you, Jessica. I guess I'll just open by saying that I still have my overriding concern here is that this project still represents to me 5 pounds in a 4 pound bag. There's just too much going on here. You're pushing the envelope of the site. I appreciate what you've tried to do and pulling things back. Could we go back to the east elevation for a moment? I thought I was not sure I was understanding what you're doing over there. I thought in the perspective view, the part facing 44th Street, those townhouse units, I saw something on the elevation that looks like a pediment, but I didn't see that in all the drawings. Maybe it's just because it's kind of dark and fuzzy in there. Are there pediments at the 4th floor level of that townhouse structure?
There are pediments just about the 3rd floor, yes. So
I think you can do without those were to me sort of contrived. I would you know, you're trying to make some gestures to, you know, fit into the period of the neighborhood that I think the building is different enough that the pediment doesn't help your case in that regard. But going back to my, you know, I think also it helps with the side of those units on the south side where it turns the corner. Behind the gas station property, you have some brick and some detail and so forth, but I still see way too much of that white siding, and I see a little bit of depth difference in massing along there, but I still think it's too much, and the white is too much too. The white, to me, draws too much attention to it. I try to make it go as background as possible. Make it the gray, make it the dark, one of the dark siding colors with this, or what you need to do. But I think the way to help yourselves out here is to maybe you've got to lose a couple of units up there on the 4th floor of that area, wrapping the back of the gas station on those 2 sides. It just seems to be. That's the poor sister of all of this, and I know you'd like to think there's going to be another building blocking it someday, but there's no guarantee that that'll ever happen. It's clearly a second-class part of the building, but it's not a secondary elevation in my view because of the existing condition. And I would also have the same concerns that we discussed about the previous building regarding, you know, the window details. So, but not to entirely throw water on the fire here, I think we have made some gestures to express our concerns.
I think I echo everything that Doug just said. I think I agree with all of it, including the 5 pounds of flour in a 4 pound bag. You know, Chad and Tim, I don't envy you here. This is a difficult parcel. It's a difficult layout, but it might be that we're trying to accomplish too much with too little here. You know, I can't think of most apartments that I can think of in the neighborhood in the historic district have an alley behind them, or they only go to the back of the lot. Here we have an apartment going clear across between blocks, And I think that presents some challenges. And if we look at the north elevation there, no, I'm sorry, I want to look at the, yeah, that's right, the north elevation. There. I mean, that's what faces into the residential community. That's what faces into people's backyards. It'll be visible from the street. And it's treated here like the back of the house, and I understand why, but it's really not. It's also the front of the house in many regards because it's what faces into the residential community. Doug's comment about the white hardy, I agree with. I'd pick one color scheme and go with it. But my comments about hardy, Chad and Tim, by the way, everything I said about 50th, I apply here. The hardy between the windows, all that. I don't need to belabor that point. They apply equally to this project. But here, even more so than on 50th, I would really encourage a setback or a step down as you go into the residential component. You have a wall that runs east and west between 44th and 45th. That's, you know, that's fairly massive. Granted, it's 4 stories, but it's still a contiguous wall that runs between the blocks. And I think stepping that down or stepping it back and adding some architectural detail, additional architectural detail would be really helpful. The same comments about windows that we made on 50th apply equally here. With regard to the parking situation, is it my understanding that the parking only exits out onto 45th? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. One of the comments, community comments that I thought was particularly on point was to make sure that we have adequate pedestrian visibility there. Just looking at that site plan, it appears that you have to pull out onto the sidewalk to get a clear right-left view. And if there's a way to increase visibility so that that wouldn't be necessary, I think that would be really helpful and increase safety.
Yeah, and so some clarification on that, because I guess we didn't address it in the presentation. You can see where the arrows of the in and out on that garage are. So the plan would be to have the gate further set back in almost 20 feet so it opens, so someone's not opening the door, pulling right out onto it. So that would be set inside. And then as well as that, similar to what like you find at the quarters exit on West 28th, an audible and visible alert, so that when the garage is opening or someone's pulling in or out, you would have something to tell pedestrians that there is a car that's going to be coming in and out of that. So that's our intention there.
It might be better to do it so that you can tell if a car is coming in and out with greater visibility than an audible sound. I live adjacent to Edge 32, and every time that gate opens and closes, I know it, and I know it in my home.
Yeah.
I'm sure the people on 45th don't want to know every time someone comes and goes from the apartment building. So just keep that in mind as well.
Absolutely.
And then I guess we can look at the south elevation on the screen there. I think what you did next to the building that you're keeping, and thank you for that, by the way, you've done well, but then it just sort of, it trails off. And I understand you have a car lot on the west end of you and a gas station on the east end of you. But for now, those are frontages. They'll be visible from the public right away. We don't know if anything will be built there. We don't know how long it will take, if ever. And so I'm hesitant to treat them again like back of the house sort of elevations. And I think that they need to have more going on there, more attention to the detail than just the hardy from top to bottom. And then if we could go to, and I'm just painting right now, Chad, Tim, in broad brush strokes to not belabor points. If we go to the east elevations, there, look, I love a good pediment. I'm a classicist at heart, but I don't think, to Doug's point, it feels a little contrived. And I don't think it works particularly well in that situation. And I think that those, especially because they adjoin immediately the 2-family housing district there and what's there, that And I'm not saying that they can't remain 3 stories, and I know that the 4th is set back, and I think that's good. But I think paying a little more attention to how that can be designed to at least have a facade that's more in keeping with the fenestration and the cadence of the street there. I think that would go a long way, and maybe even set back so that there's more of a porch area there, or there are various ways of doing it. But I think that needs a little bit of work as well.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
then-
there are.
Yeah.
We do have some walk-up porches there, but we can clarify and make those more accentuated as well.
And you can see if you scroll down to that elevation there on 44th. There's a 3D rendering of it. Yeah, there. That's what I'm talking about. That you have a 2-story building, 2.5-story building immediately to the north there. I would look at ways of easing that entrance into the 2-family housing district. And then my final comment is probably the biggest and most challenging ask at all. And I know we've said it before, and I understand why you're hesitant to do it. But I think the project could be ultimately really improved if it were broken up into 2 buildings. And I know that's the comment that you're probably least wanting to hear, but I think that there could be a lot gained from that. And I think a lot of the issues that we're discussing here this afternoon would be remedied by not having it one block to block building. And I understand, Chad, the reasons not to do that and your concerns there. But I'd ask again that you give that a second look.
Okay.
I will end my comments. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks, Chad and Tim and team. I think that you've listened to every single one of our comments previously and made adjustments to the design. So thank you for taking all of that into consideration. But I do want to echo Alex and Doug's comments about the overall scale of this project, the massing in certain areas, some of the concerns about egress and ingress from the parking area. Comparing this to the 50th project, from a massing standpoint, that one I feel like is more appropriate and successful because basically 85% of the frontage on Lorraine is sort of the main mass of the building, and then it wraps the corners. The challenge here is that really 20% of this development fronts on Lorraine, with a majority of it happening from block to block right along the residential sort of face of this. So I would echo Alex's comments about really considering breaking this into 2 or 3 different buildings that really kind of fit the site and fit the context better than one massive building. I think that, and I raised this point the last time. It looks like on the interior lot lines, specifically the ones that front on the gas station and auto lot. It looks like you're building right up to the property line, and you have a heck of a lot of openings along that. And I am concerned that you're not actually able to build what you're showing, because if someone were to purchase those other 2 corner lots and build a 3-story, 4-story, or 5-story building, that they, from a fire separation standpoint, I just don't, I would really, just make sure that you're doing your due diligence there to make sure that you're actually able to build what you're proposing. And that, again, may also be remedied if this were multiple buildings. And then the one final comment, I guess just a clarification, is so there's 58 parking spots, right? How many units are included in this development?
There's currently 101 units.
Okay. So I do, I think there were some public comments about the number of parking spaces versus the number of units available. And I assume that you'll have to go for a variance on that one. But I think we, as more and more of these developments happen in the neighborhood, especially in this area of the neighborhood, which I'm sure you're well aware, Chad, with your other projects, is that there's a much larger impact on street parking within the neighborhood. And we're going to get to a point where, if we're not providing, at least 1-for-1, when, many of these units probably will have two adults with 2 cars living in them. It's going to put that much more of a strain on the street parking and really livability and walkability of the neighborhoods. So I would ask that, as part of considering this and considering the 50th is really that balance of units versus the balance of parking, because I think that is becoming more and more of a concern as these large scale projects come online in the neighborhood. So anyway, those are my comments here.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, the parking ratio is something obviously by the design and footprint of the building. If this was just retail on Lorraine per se, the retail load would actually be more than the parking load required for apartments. So we did another project in the neighborhood, and say the retail portion on Lorraine is, call it 10,000 square foot lot. If you were to make that 2 stories, you get to have a requirement of over 200 spaces plus. And based off the variances in the existing buildings up and down Lorraine, there's no way to provide parking. One thing that is evident to me, I was over there yesterday, is the city owns the McCafferty Center, which is closed and shut down. I think from a city perspective, the onus isn't just on the existing buildings and private property owners who can't do it, but that McCafferty Center to me would appear as a golden egg for the city if they're serious about creating parking. They own the property, they have the control of what happens there. There's a lot of private development and buildings that are vacated still on Lorraine that may need parking, could help alleviate parking in projects like this. But I think that building is a tremendous opportunity to the city to look at an opportunity to provide parking for the neighborhood, even in the short term now and in the long term. How can that property be used as something they can facilitate, hopefully some development on that site, but a public solution to provide more parking. But we hear you. One of the other things too we've evaluated, and if it comes down to it, we're potentially willing to go towards, is automated car lifts inside of the garage. If we went down that path, the studies we've done, we can reach almost 92 parking spaces inside of our building. So without adjusting or shrinking the building, we can almost hit that 1-to-1 ratio inside of the building as it currently sits. And I guess my question to you and any other members who have parking concerns, would that be something that would satisfy you all?
Well, I guess from my
I
point, I would ask you if you have conducted or done any kind of parking analysis as to how many street spaces are available, because I understand and can accept that you don't have a 1-to-1 parking ratio of off-street spaces, but this is so deficient. You don't even have 50% here that I think it would be useful to know how many street parking spaces are available, around the block where you're currently located. I drive around there all the time, and there's always cars parked on the street. And Lorraine has parking prohibitions for certain times of day for rush hour, and so you really have to. I think that there's going to be most taxing on 45th Street, and there's only a few spaces on 44th Street. I mean, look at the gas station area, and that wipes out a whole bunch of parking because their whole frontage around both sides is pretty much a big curb cut. So I worry about that considerably. That you may not have two people with two cars in every unit. You're going to have some of that, and just based on the Cleveland transportation situation now, I think finding 50% of the people with not owning a car living here is not achievable.
Absolutely. I don't have the exact number, but I know there's at least 40 spaces on the street between 45th and 44th. One of the other options we're pursuing is the neighboring property has an approximately 18 car parking lot. So we're working on seeing if there's a resolution for after hours parking that our tenants or guests of the tenants could utilize that space as well. So if that came to fruition, we would be over 1-to-1 as well if we did the lifts plus that. So all areas, because we want the businesses that are there currently to be successful. We want the neighbors that live on the street to have parking for themselves and their guests. And same thing, whether it's two people living in a unit or not, they certainly might have a friend over to watch the Browns game or entertain themselves on a Friday night. So we want to see a practical parking ratio. But from our experience in buildings in the neighborhood, you don't always have a 1-to-1 need of parking for the residents of the building. And so that's generally what we look to design for. But in order to work with the neighbors in the city, we're exploring other options to accommodate that more typical 1-to-1 ratio.
Well, I guess in your favor, I would say that probably the next worst ratio in that regard that we've encountered in recent years was there's I forget what it's called now, but up on Clinton Avenue, there's a 70 unit, which were all one bedrooms, and I'm pretty sure that their off-street parking was around 50%, and that was a big concern for most of us on the committee at that time. Was that going to overload the parking on Clinton Avenue? And I know people that live on Clinton Avenue around there, and it hasn't turned into the Hatfield and McCoys. Nobody's shot each other yet over parking spaces, so perhaps our concerns were a little overstated at that time.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the other things too we're going to offer to the tenants would be at least 10 bikes to share and 10 of the electric type of scooters you see around the neighborhood to again promote people to live there. In one of the neighborhood meetings too that we had last week with one of the block clubs, a couple of the people, or one gentleman in particular, goes to CSU, and we have a lot of students as residents, and they get bus passes sometimes as their student enrollment. And we would be willing to encourage and maybe potentially offer bus pass is for people who live downtown or work downtown and could utilize those services that are right outside the front door too. So, it's one of the things I love about the neighborhood. It's walkable. It truly is. And not needing a car is possible in here versus living in the suburbs where you need it. So.
I don't want to beat the dead horse, but just to put my opinion in here, I do feel like this is still too large. I think 3 separate buildings would feel a lot better for the space. It does not feel like this has to be one building. I like how you move the parking to the 45th. That seems a lot safer to me. I'm not a traffic analyst or anything like that, but having that spill out onto a 2-way street instead of a 1-way street just feels like a better direction for all the residents going anywhere they want to go. And I actually liked how you had it previously on Lorraine Street, fronting Lorraine with the 4-story brick building. I did prefer that design better. I don't know if everybody else felt the same, but I liked how you had that designed. As for the 2 side streets, I would like to see these look more like townhouses than a building. I think you're starting to get there on 44th. 45th still feels like a really large building to me. if these had more of a person-sized entrance and a feeling of, entrance to a house instead of entrance to a massive building, it would feel a lot more appropriate for the rest of the residential buildings on the street.
Just throw my 2 cents in, kind of echo everything. I was thinking here, in this particular image, I know you have the brick ledge there. I don't know, and I also like how you have that horizontal there. And I don't know if you brought the brick up, maybe it could kind of transition a little bit better um, to the neighboring homes. I also like that these images are including kind of texture. Like I can see the lap siding, and I think it's a scale material, and I think it looks kind of nice here in some of the other renderings. And then I was just gonna add that I kind of missed the mural. But overall, um, I actually think you've done a pretty good job at starting to edit it down and sort of eliminate some of the extra details. This image keeps staring at, I keep seeing those, I'm guessing they're picnic things up top, and I'm like, oh, the spikes on the top are kind of, I can't stop staring at them. Um, and then could we go to the perspective that's from that corner, from that gas, or not the gas station, but well, this one, I think looks nice. I think those balconies tucked in like that. I think that's kind of nice. I do, like I said, I do see the mural on the first floor there too, though. I really like that. Um, but could you go to the corner perspective that's from the street? It's like, with the big white, yeah, this one. This one, like I get what we were going for here. This image um, could be flipped through quicker, maybe, because this big box in the front is just a wonky image to me. And I don't know how much it's actually getting here. Um, but I kind of echo the rest of the comments. I actually do think it's coming along very nicely. I know it may or may not be feasible to break it up as everyone's suggesting. It's a big move, especially financially. So I wouldn't fault you for that. I mean, I know it does seem like trying to cram something into a site that is just not very forgiving. Um, but like I said, I do like what you've done along Lorraine. I do like the stepping back. And then again, reiterating more treatment to the rear. Those large white, expansive facades in the back are, I mean, being in the neighborhood, I would look up and just see white. So, um, it might be, that's definitely something to look at, a different color. Um, and, you know, nope, that's it. Sorry. That's all I got.
Anyone else on the committee?
All right, hearing nothing else, unless you have any questions, Chad and Tim, are you amenable to tabling it?
Yes, absolutely.
And I will move to table.
We have a second?
I'll second.
Second. Oh, go ahead.
All right, Dan, please call the roll.
Mr. Frondorf,
Yes.
Ms. Land,
Yes.
Mr. Lozier just had to step away. Mr. Sambry?
Yeah.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
And Mr. Wall.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, the motion to table passes.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll be in touch, Ted.
Thank you for your comments.
All right. Up next, we have conceptual review for comment. We've got case OC 23-21, the Hewlett Hotel, 1452 to 1468 West 25th Street. Here for concept review of renovation and new construction. We've got Denver Booker from VOCON and I think I saw Mark here as well. So yeah, Denver, if you guys want to take away the presentation, just let me know and you want me to switch through slides.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. All right. Good afternoon. We're happy to present this project to you. With me today, we have James Asemis and Mark Raymond from the Development and Ownership team, and also my colleague Conway Padron from VOCON. So let's just go to the next slide. All right, the red dashed rectangle represents the site. The site is a combination of two existing buildings and the undeveloped land associated with those parcels. They're on West 25th Street, between West 25th and West 26th. Next. These views show you the existing conditions. Upper left, the Nelson Building, as it's known, the 1468 West 25th. Then there's an open lot just to the north, which is part of the site. And then the next building, 1452 West 25th Street, represents the frontage on West 25th. Just south of the building, on the 1468, you see an existing mural, which our intentions are to maintain it, and an open surface parking lot that is not part of this property. Middle shows you the empty kind of a missing tooth between the two existing buildings. And as you'll see, our intentions with this project is to knit the two existing buildings together with a new infill building and then a new west wing that would occupy a portion of this parking lot we're seeing in the upper right, which is the view of the back sides of the building from West 26th. Lower left, just another image from the street highlighting the 1452 building, which is 2 stories. And then lower right, this is the view of the property from Church, looking north. So you see the south side of 1468 there to the right with the mural. And then there's 2 buildings there right tight to Church that again are not part of this project. Next. Additional context photos. We can refer back to these at any time during the presentation if we need to. Next. Next. This project, we are in the process. We're working with Diana Wellman for historic tax credits. We're making application for our part 2, and then in the late summer, fall round of applications for state historic tax credits. So everything that we're doing in terms of the design is in the spirit of the requirements to meet their requirements for this project. And it's interesting to note that we are in actually 2 historic districts. One that's recognized nationally, very, very, very small, identified there in the left image with the black outline and the red square representing our site, the Detroit Historic District. And then, as you know, and so we're with this group, we're part of the Ohio City Historic District as well. The right image simply, other than highlighting that this is a local retail business district, the West 25th Street frontage is subject to pedestrian retail overlay district and street frontage and use requirements, all of which we're meeting. Next. I think we have another drawing that is a little more zoomed in. Yeah. This, actually go back, sorry. This just generally sets up some of the dimensional requirements associated with the PRO. You'll note that the infill building represented by the yellow rectangle is set back 5 feet from the other buildings. That is done intentionally in deference to the 2 historic buildings and is the maximum setback allowed within the PRO. The 40-foot dimension is just representative of the depth from the front facade, which I think before you can have parking, in this case, we have active uses along the entire frontage. The parking is fully screened and not visible from West 25th Street. Next. This series of elevations simply speaks to the heights of the existing and proposed new buildings. We are in a height district that allows for buildings, I believe, up to 115 feet. We're not coming even remotely close to that. And we're at a height that is contextual with neighboring buildings. Next. And another two images just showing some height comparison with our 4th floor of our infill building and the 4-story new west building being the tallest parts of our project. Next. Here we can describe the kind of the overall program and disposition on the site. The red portions of the site are kind of pinkish color. Those are the ground floors of the 2 existing buildings. To the north, upper right, 2 retail spaces within 1452 building. Attention to maintain that as new retail. And where you're seeing the yellow there, that forms part of the egress off the 2nd floor hotel rooms. The yellow squares we indicated earlier is the 1st floor of the new infill building, and that will be the lobby for the new hotel. And then lastly, bottom of the page, that is the 1st floor of the 1468 building. A couple things to point out. The narrower portion of the rectangle to the left is the kitchen for a new ground floor restaurant that will serve the public, the hotel, and the 6 apartments. It also replaces a 1-story appendage to the building that reaches to West 26th Street. So we will be removing kind of a late multi-phase 1-story addition on the west side of the 1468 building and replacing it with this smaller 1-story addition. What you're seeing in the darker gray to the left represents the footprint of the new west wing. All of the open area to the west of these existing buildings is still being maintained for surface parking. Basically lifted the program up on columns so that we could park under the building. And then the narrow gray rectangle that you see that's connecting the bigger rectangle to the yellow box is a 3-story bridge that connects all the levels of the historic and new infill building with the new west wing. We'll see that in the upper floor plans. You see a trash enclosure integrated under the gray box just there at the lower left corner. Entrance into and out of this parking area will have security gates. Operationally, something to determine whether it'll be open all the time during the day and then closed in the evening, or always remotely operated, to be determined. There is a pedestrian gate as well in the very middle. You see that open space between the parking spaces, allowing residents or hotel visitors to move from the hotel into the neighborhood on East 26th Street. Next. This is the 2nd floor plan. Looking to the right, upper right first, that's the 2nd floor of the existing 1452 building, being adaptively reused into 8 new hotel rooms. Then we have the infill building in the middle, where we have 5 new suites. And then lastly, the 1468 building, bottom right, where you're seeing 4 hotel rooms and the new stair and new pair of elevators that serve the entire development. And then moving to the left, we have the bridge that connects to the new west wing. And the second floor of the west wing is all new hotel rooms. I guess neglected kind of the big picture. This project is a mixed use, adaptive reuse redevelopment. It's a boutique hotel with 63 keys, 6 apartments that'll be on the 4th floor of the new west wing, and then the ground level retail that we've already pointed out. Next. This is the 3rd floor. So you see that the 1452, we're looking at its roof, it drops off. The infill building has a 3rd floor that looks like it's second. And likewise with 1468, it's a little bit different on this level because of existing stair and fenestration patterns. West wing, the same on the 3rd floor as the second. Next. So the 4th floor, the infill building does have a small 4th floor that's significantly set back from West 25th Street. That's done in part to make it more complementary to the historic structures and also to provide a significant outdoor terrace off of this rooftop bar with spectacular views to the future Irishtown Bend Park and the skyline beyond. The 4th floor of the new west wing to the left is the 6 apartments that will enjoy all the benefits of this boutique hotel with concierge services and use of all the amenity spaces and quick access to the bar restaurant. Next. This is just the basement. The 2 existing buildings do have full basements, and the new infill building we will develop with a basement as well. Those spaces will serve as service, storage, and service space for the retail and hotel. Next. As we looked to how we should address the architecture for the new infill building and the west wing, they're a little bit different in terms of their immediate context and also the rules by which we need to develop them in the spirit of State Historic Preservation Office and our application for tax credits. So we looked immediately to the immediate neighborhood in terms of the nature of buildings similar to the historic buildings that we're working with, and these are representative of that. Next. This is a historic photograph of the 1452 building. Helped us in terms of understanding the existing fenestration patterns and the windows and the storefronts, which in our designs, you'll see, we're basically mimicking the original historic windows with the rehabilitation of this part of the building. Thanks. And a little less visible, but just beyond, we're seeing yes, there you go, the 1468 building. Its upper elevation, the windows are mostly intact. At one point, it had a fire escape on the front. And because its storefront is no longer there, and I don't believe we have any historic photos of it, but we've done something that is very much in the spirit of what would have likely been there. Next. So here's a series of images in terms of what we've done. To the right in this image, again, referring back to that historic photo, the 1452 building, the fenestration pattern is created to mimic the original storefronts. The infill building in the middle, recessed back 5 feet, in a slightly darker tone of brick than the 1452 building, making it distinct and kind of contributing to the streetscape as it would have originally in terms of a cadence of multiple buildings rather than a single large structure. And then to the left, the 1468 building with its new storefront, historically sensitive to the existing building and what might have been there before. And it will remain painted because it is painted brick now. Within preservation guidelines and working with our historic tax consultant, we need to maintain it as a painted brick building. Back to the middle, you're seeing the Hewlett sign. While it was not a sign exactly like this on the building that was here earlier, there were signs like that in the neighborhood. So it's certainly in the spirit of the historic character of the neighborhood, and you're seeing the fourth floor significantly pushed back for the rooftop bar. Next. This is simply a little further north on West 25th, so you have a better view of how the combination of restored, adaptively reused buildings and the new infill building, as well as a glimpse of the west wing peeking up over the other existing buildings, kind of all mixed together in a montage of singular, multiple volumes, which is very much the character of the neighborhood. Next. Then just three views, a little bit closer up. You'll notice that in the infill building at the ground level, they have a little bit of a more sculpted, modern, some might say quirky entrance to signify, hey, this is a new hotel. This is a little different, it's boutique, but it's particularly loud or ostentatious. It's just a nod that, hey, something a little different's happening here. And by the way, I'm not a historic building. You can see that 1468 with the lower right, the idea is that we'll be able to, on a significant existing sidewalk, have outdoor dining associated with the restaurant and the new storefront, part of which will be operable nano wall or something similar, but the rhythm and joint pattern within that is all done to emulate what might have been again the storefront. Next. Another view from the south. Next. And then from church, here you're seeing in the backdrop, the kind of medium gray is the bridge that links the new infill building with the west wing, and just a little bit of the west wing glimpsing over there, over the red brick building. Next. And then this is from the corner of Church and West 26th Street with the new west wing peeking up above the trees. Next. This is the view from Detroit looking south on West 26th Street. And the building kind of follows the line of the road as it arcs to the right. Definitely keeping in scale with the buildings that are on Detroit and being suitably background for its position on West 26th Street. Next. And then a little closer on West 26th Street. What we're seeing here is, so now closer to this, we're proposing a fiber cement panel siding in this medium, almost zinc colored gray, black windows, black trim, and then there will be an ornamental fence and gates along the parking area with significant landscaping in the 6-foot buffer that we provided. And then these images kind of round out, just describing the west wing. The lower right image, you'll notice in the upper left part of that building, there's a balcony, an inset significant balcony associated with that corner unit, it's a very special unit, was spectacular views of the city over the existing 1452 building. That is the presentation. There's a lot of pieces, parts here. Happy to go back, clarify any details, and answer any of your questions.
Well, thank you, Denver. That was a lot to throw out there at one time, and I guess overall I would say you're off to a very good start in working with the historic buildings and the infill and additions. I think the mapping and configuration, fenestration of the addition on the west wing, I think is very elegant and looks good and is connected minimally to the historic buildings. I guess what I would say, if we go back to some of the either renderings of the front on 25th Street, I would say that you know, your treatment of the existing buildings, the 1468 and the 1452, are looking pretty good. We'll have to see more details about what you're doing with the storefront there to see how that's really appearing. I know it's all just stuff right now. My first thought is that those planters are a bit too massive. You know, I would think about minimizing those or just using a fence or something like that. It kind of takes away from the historic building, I think, in my opinion. I think what you've done with the 1452 building is altogether appropriate. I think I appreciate what you're doing with the infill building. I like the massing of it, and they pulled it back from the street for the setback. But I think it makes too many references to, you know, the say 1900 or early 20th century part of the 1452 building, and just that little entrance canopy over the middle bay. I don't think is quite enough to say, hey, I'm not an historic building. I would try to make some other gestures to differentiate it from an historic building, would be my thought. And I think eventually, you know, you're not down to those details yet, but I think because of when I look at the second story windows on the 1452 building, and you know, those are the very large glass areas applied to hotel rooms. So I imagine whatever window treatment you put on there will be drawn a significant percentage of the time. So I think we'll be interested to see what kind of window treatment you're proposing, and I guess that goes for what you're doing with the infill building as well. I think I consider that important. I like what you did with the fourth floor of the, you know, the infill building as well, holding that back. I like the, you know, dual neon sign and so forth. I think all of that is good. I know it's kind of rough, but is the cornice of the 1452 building, you know, a restoration of what's there, or is it not there and you're interpreting it some way? You didn't mention what that is. I just don't recall from the existing photographs if that's, you know, the way it looks right now, or if you're doing something to it.
It's there, and we're simply doing any kind of masonry repairs or restoration that's necessary as part of the project. Should be a photograph at the beginning.
No, there's part of it.
Yeah, there it is. You can see it lower left.
Yes, I guess you just interpreted it with more contrast than it shows in the photograph, so it kind of jumps off the page some more. But
Right.
All right, well that's all good. I also think that it probably needs some more thought on the West 26th Street side, the back side of it. You know, I love that you left the 6-foot buffer for some reasonable landscape screening. I don't know how, I think you probably need to address operationally how the fences and gates are going to work. You know, it's great for residents, but, you know, hotel guests arriving to check in and so forth, if it's in front of with a locked gate, how's that gonna work? So I guess I'd like to, you know, next time, you know, hear more details about how you propose all that to work together. And other than that, I think this is a terrific preliminary design.
Thank you.
Andrew, I think I agree with everything Doug just said, except for one thing. I thought the new infill building that you have there on 25th is well done, and to me, it reads like a new building. So I don't have the same concern Doug has about being confused as to whether it's new or old. And I think it follows the Secretary of Interior standards for adding on to historic buildings. It's set back, it's of a different brick color. The detailing is, to my eye, modern. And I think that you've done a good job with that. I only have 3 comments. One, did you hear our discussion regarding windows with the past applicant?
Of course.
Okay, then I won't need to repeat myself there. And then my 2 substantive comments pertain to the 26th Street side. The first is that the building is up on stilts, and so it has this sort of 1960s Le Corbusier read of it, and it's not my favorite. And I wondered, rather than, you know, some grass is there, if we could work on screening or putting a wall down, or maybe even program and utilize the street frontage there. And 26, you know, could have a lot of charm to it. It's a short street, it's a narrow street. It has a curve in it that brings one's eye down, creates some interest. It might be worth, actually, I'd like it to consider what else can you do there other than just having it vegetation as screening. And then my last comment is, you know, that building that we see on the screen there, that's all hardy panels. And I really urge you to consider another material for that. I think that that's just too much hardy. And I don't think that will necessarily age as well. One of my colleagues on the prior comment, the prior applicant, so, you know, we want these buildings to last for generations, and some long-lasting material, whether it's back to brick and stone, whether it's some sort of metal, but the entire thing to be clad in hardy like that is a bit much, I think. Those are my 2 substantive comments. Otherwise, I agree with Doug. The massing is great. The layout is great. You're very much on the right track. And my 2 comments, I think, are fairly easily addressable. That's all I have.
Just quickly to respond, so that we're aligned with the windows on the West 25th Street side, where we're doing the restoration work and the infill building. All of those windows will be a combination of aluminum clad wood windows, and whatever is, what should we say, meets the State Historic Preservation Office's requirements. So that's going to be very much restrained in terms of our choices. The new west wing that we're looking at here in this image, our initial thought is, given the size of the windows, this will either be a high quality vinyl or fiberglass. And as context to that, because I'm fully with you guys in terms of preferring aluminum clad wood windows, but we all know in this call that is the most expensive option. The quarter phase 2 that our office completed was all done with a fairly high quality vinyl window. And I think that, at least from my perspective, and I think you would agree, it's a very handsome building and the windows do not look cheap. So we'll keep that in mind. We'll certainly at the next level of review, bring back the proposed windows and details and final material, whether it's vinyl or fiberglass or something else, depending on where we end up. Your second comment with respect to West 26th Street first floor program and kind of landscape approach. We have, well, one, we needed to maximize the parking on the site, which we've done. So adding first floor program there that would kind of disguise that this is parking isn't possible for us. So if we do add a wall instead of a screen of landscape, then the wall is simply that. It's a wall in the street, but it would not be an active use. The grass, I will call that placeholder right now. Certainly that's a very hardy solution, but we haven't engaged our landscape architect quite yet. And so I don't want to look at that as a final solution. I think there are other landscape solutions that I think would have more substantial presence. And that would be what we would seek to do.
If you look at Edge 32, which is certainly not my favorite building, but it does screen the parking on the 32nd side. The brick goes all the way down to the ground, and then there's plantings there, not just shrubs going up at trees. And then there's a mesh, which I presume is for ventilation purposes. Maybe something along those lines here where there's, and I know the grass is just a placeholder, but at least on the 26th side, bring that wall all the way down so one's not looking into a sea of parked cars. And I appreciate the need to maximize the parking. So, but just maybe bring the screen all the way down.
Okay.
The wall.
Your last comment with respect to the building materiality here. Fiber cement panel, it can be done well, and in this kind of construction, I think at a developer and an architect perspective, not always the first choice, but again, it can be done well. So we'll take your comments into consideration, and we're also working. Even this building is subject to the purview of SHPO as it's connected to the historic structures. So they will also be commenting on the material choices for this.
I just wanted to say I kind of echoed Doug's initial comments about the front. I actually like the little modern feature, and I love the opportunity. I love some more kind of brick details that are, you know, modern. But I do think it's a good mix. I think it probably could be pushed a little bit more. My only comment, and I think it was also with respect to this building that we're looking at now, is I don't have a problem with hardy panel siding. But I probably missed maybe why it's giving large gray box a little bit. I appreciate the unit on the end because I think that starts to push and pull with things. But I look around the neighborhood and I see a lot of texture. I see a lot of stone and brick and things like with the church, and I feel like that's a little bit of a missed opportunity here. But I also I think that's probably my only comment. It's just about the materiality and about the push and pull. I think the layout's great. I think um you know, I appreciate the windows. I appreciate you even taking into account the conversation we just had about windows, though you know, I don't have a problem with the idea of fiber cement since is the scale of the building, etc. I just this building in this neighborhood is kind of missing, I don't know, it feels like it's missing a little character, or like, yeah, there's just nothing about it that stands out for me. I'm trying to figure out how I want to say that, but I think it's the materiality. That's what I got.
I'll hop in now. I really like almost all of it. I like the front. I think it works well. I don't mind the look of the infill building. I'm not a huge fan of the entrance, but it's an entrance, so to each their own. And it's a new building. I'd like to see a perspective on the inside, the courtyard space, just to see how those buildings connect from the rear, and then how that kitchen and the new building overlap a little bit more. I think that would be interesting to see. I don't hate the back. I think it's probably not exactly appropriate for this neighborhood, but it's interesting and it's new and it's infill. I'm interested to see what SHPO has, what comments they have about it. I know personally on projects I've worked on with SHPO, the addition has to be smaller and submissive to the front buildings and the major buildings. This just as a whole site, the rear is much larger than the front, and I know it's set back and off of the main facade, but I'm interested to see what kind of comments they come back with, and if they'll allow you to do this. I don't hate it. I think it's an interesting twist for the rear. I think the color could probably be a little more friendly, but I think it's okay. The massing's okay for me, and I really like how just that one stairwell side touches the ground. It might be interesting to have that whole elevation touch the ground, and then float for the rest of it. But I'm okay with it floating and you seeing into the garage as some kind of greenery space. I think is a good idea to screen that. I like this as a first attempt. I think it's really successful, and I'm interested to see where it goes from here.
Thank you.
Any other comments from committee members that haven't weighed in yet? If not, I guess we'll entertain, well, we're not voting on this. This is just a preliminary. So I would just want to reiterate my support for the addition because I think, you know, the juxtaposition in this case of the historic with the modern is good when the modern is done well. And I like a lot about the way this works. I think possibly some of the remarks that were made about maybe introducing some masonry somewhere on the base, but I like the floating aspect that the box is firmly attached to the ground at the north end and the rest of it seems to float. I like the way you've executed that so far very much.
Thank you. I mean, just a general comment, because I mean, the West Wing does raise more subjective and maybe controversial design considerations. We did study the materiality and the color quite a bit back and forth with the ownership team. And our approach here is kind of this soft blend between historic references with these large scale windows that are a little referential to more of a industrial building of another era. They kind of fill the facade, so there's a pattern and a rhythm there that is not unusual in this neighborhood, or like immediately to the north in Detroit. A number of buildings have that kind of fenestration pattern. Typically, they are associated with full brick buildings, but here this building is not making any apologies for floating above the street, brick up in the air, and look nice, but it doesn't actually make sense. And the gray color was selected to be intentionally background. This is it's a nice, simple grid of large scale windows. And maybe for some it's not enough. Maybe there's some more things we can do, but that was the intention, was do as little as possible with a few very simple moves. We'll continue to work on it.
All right, thank you, Denver. You feel you have a good
Yes,
handle on
I
that?
very much appreciate everyone's comments today, and we look forward to coming back the next stage.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Denver. So I mentioned before, the other concept that we're going to be reviewing, case OC 23-20 for 1852 Fulton Road. They're not going to be making their presentation today. I did have an applicant stop in the office from a previous week, and he brought something that was a bit different than what was proposed. So I don't know if you guys recall the Kanzaman proposal we saw a few weeks ago. What he brought to the office was more of a solid roof structure. He wanted to do rolled asphalt with a slight gable in the middle. I think he said 1/4 inch drop per foot. I think these red marks here are meant to signify that there'll be some trim around the top. But it looks, he's planning on doing 16-inch on center, basically joists with a slight gable and a roof. Do you guys want to see this again? It's different than what was proposed. I mean, he's talking about having gutters. He said he's still willing to have the decorative rafter tails that we kind of saw in the pergola type version, but putting a slight gable onto it, adding a gutter, making it a solid roof instead of I think what you guys had said was some sort of clear plastic, so that you could still use it during the rain, but it would appear open. So I guess wanted some feedback from you guys as to whether you wanted him to come back and represent his full new project, or if, since it was a more modern building, replacing a series of awnings, I guess I just wanted to see where you guys felt with it.
I think we should see this again because I can't read all the notations on here, but I don't feel it adequately describes all the differences and changes he's made, and particularly what's happening with those column posts. He's got, like I guess you were referring to those little red rectangles at the top of the post. What the heck is that? I don't know. Some kind of capital trim on it. I don't know. He says, you got a notation I can read there, 6x6 post, but that looks bigger than a 6x6. Is it trimmed out with something? And if so, what is it?
Yeah, it does look. I mean, if this is all however many feet across, it does look a bit bigger than a 6x6 post. And then there's the notation for the 1x8 pine board, but that won't last long in the weather.
Right. So I think we need to come back and hear more detail from him.
Okay, that was my thinking. He just stopped in pretty shortly after I sent out the agenda to you guys, so I just wanted to, figured I'd check.
All right, well, speaking of checking, I suppose I could have gone to the Landmarks website and seen, I was curious if, the people with the solar panels on their house that we just approved, what was their experience with the Landmarks Commission?
They've not come to the commission yet. They asked for a little bit more time, and then yeah, there were some timing conflicts, so I think we have them tentatively scheduled for later this month, but I'm not sure which meeting, so they haven't come through yet.
All right, they haven't been there yet. Well, I am curious to see how the commission responds to that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
All right, I guess that concludes our agenda for today. So, this meeting of the Ohio City Design Review. Sure.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thanks, everyone.
for sticking it out.
Thank you.